Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Thursday, January 7th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. The NFL playoffs are here, and the Chiefs are sitting out the first weekend as the AFC's top seed, but there's plenty to talk about, and we did so with Chiefs beat writer Herbie Teope and columnist Vahe Gregorian. We previewed this weekend's AFC games, discussed Patrick Mahomes and the MVP race, speculated on a possible Eric Bieniemy landing spot if he becomes a head coach, and talked much more. We'll be back with SportsBeat Live next Thursday before the Chiefs playoff opener, and might even sneak one in on Monday when we know the playoff opponent. But let's get started today with Vahe and Herbie talking Chiefs. Herbie Teope and Vahe Gregorian are here, and we're going to talk Chiefs. Let me first say that you might, during the football season, be used to hearing our Thursday podcast as a replay of a SportsBeat Live recorded on Thursday morning. But we had some conflicts. We couldn't get the band together in a complete way for SportsBeat Live, so we're doing it in podcast form. I'm really happy that Vahe and Herbie were able to join us today, and I think you'll get the full group hopefully on Monday morning when we take a first look at the Chiefs' playoff opponent. We will know that on Monday. Might know it on Saturday. It's possible to know it on Saturday, but maybe not. Maybe we won't know for sure until late Sunday night. So, hey, one other thing before we get started that I wanted to say, and that was to offer a salute to the Kansas City Stars and McClatchy's coverage teams, news side and editorial board, for the work that they did on Wednesday covering the riots in Washington D.C. We were all riveted to our favorite cable television network, but I found myself refreshing constantly our website, thekansascity.com, to read the updates and to see what Brian Lowry especially, but our editorial board also, what they had to say. So quite a day in Washington, D.C. and in the country on Wednesday. And I just thought, as always, the Star and McClatchy rose to the occasion and covered it in a just excellent way. So just wanted to get that out.
Blair,
salute to. Go ahead, Vi.
If I may just chime in, just to really kind of reiterate your point. I mean, it was basically a nation convulsed yesterday with this going on. We're all unable to look away once we're taking it in, and what happens? The journalists, as you noted, particularly of McClatchy and the Star, go into it and keep moving and do the hard work, and our own Brian Lowry included in that, with checking in with local Congress people, and I just was amazed at that. And well said, and I echo the salute.
It's funny, Vahe and Herbie, we'll be in the newsroom sometimes, and we'll get, we'll see a Glenn Rice or a Laura Bauer or Judy Thomas, and they'll express how much they admire the work that we do covering sports. And sometimes I'm embarrassed by that. But listen, it's something of a labor of love for what we do, and it is for them as well. But they, my admiration knows no bounds for the people who work here on the news side and the job that they do, and that goes all the way up the ladder to the editors as well. So again, if you haven't read it, pick up a Kansas City Star today, or go to kansascity.com and read the coverage of one of the craziest days that I can remember. So, hey, so let's talk Chiefs. That's why we're here. And Herbie, as always, why don't you get us started? There was a new name to the I guess it's the injury list after the regular season finale against the Chargers on Sunday. We got that list from Andy Reid after the game, but in the last couple of days, another name has popped up, and it's Mike Danna, the defensive end, who I think is having a pretty nice season as a as a rookie. He is on the COVID-19 list. What does that mean, and what do you project his availability to be?
Well, it's not just Mike Danna. They had a coach, strength and conditioning coach Barry Rubin, tested positive on Tuesday. So he's out of the building now, and with the strict protocols, he won't be around the team for at least 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days. The NFL is going to follow the CDC guidelines on this one. With Mike Danna, it really depends on if he tested positive or if he was a high-risk contact. If he tested positive, now his availability for the divisional round will be certainly in jeopardy because he has to be away from the team for 10 days. If he's a high-risk contact, as some reports suggest, the Chiefs aren't confirming this, but if it's a high-risk contact, he has to go through the COVID protocols of 5 days of isolation and obviously test negative for 5 consecutive days before he's even allowed to return to the team facility. Now, that's going to affect him if he's a high-risk contact because the Chiefs return to practice. Well, today it's Thursday, so they're going to be going through a walkthrough practice Thursday and Friday, take the break, and then next week ramp up for the AFC divisional round. His situation, and this whole COVID thing, as we're discussing this, it has affected the league over the last couple of weeks. You think about the Cleveland Browns right now, 3 of their coaching staff, including the head coach and 2 of their players, they won't even be around this weekend for their first playoff appearance in years. But as far as the Chiefs are concerned, they did get Anthony Hitchens back off of the reserve COVID-19 list. He missed the last 2 regular season games, but he was deemed a high-risk contact as opposed to testing positive. So we're starting to see the challenges that the NFL has faced throughout the year. It's highly commendable. They did get 256 games in, but the pandemic still continues to affect the league.
Hey, Blair and Herbie, am I remembering this right? Is the only person with the Chiefs who actually tested positive for COVID-19 as opposed to having enough exposure to end up on the list, is the only person Rick Burkholder, the team's infectious control officer, and as we know, vice president of sports and performance?
No, also don't forget McCole Hardman, because we also got him. McCole Hardman was placed on the list during the team's bye week.
But did he have COVID? That's what I'm trying to remember. Did he?
Yeah. He pretty much confirmed it. When we talked to him in early December.
That's right.
Anthony Sherman, who ended up missing 3 games, did not test positive. He was actually deemed a high-risk contact as well.
Okay.
I remember Hardman saying he didn't feel the symptoms. He had the positive test, but didn't feel the symptoms. It was
correct.
So, hey, well, that's the Anthony Hitchens news. His ability to return is big news for the Chiefs because of the issues they were having at that position group in the last couple of weeks of the season. They were, I think they were down. Am I right about this? They were down to 2 healthy linebackers against the Chargers last week.
Correct. On the active roster, you had Darius Harris and Willie Gay. And, of course, Willie Gay, as our colleague Sam McDowell reported, suffered a high ankle sprain. So he's out a projected 2 to 4 weeks. The optimistic side with 2 weeks means he'll be available for the divisional rounds. If it's the 4-week timetable, then, we might not see him again until the Super Bowl.
Okay, sounds good. And let me throw a couple other names at you, Herbie, just to get a sense of possible availability. And speaking of the linebacker group, Dorian O'Daniel is one. We haven't seen him since I want to say week 11. I can't remember where he got the high ankle sprain, but he went on injured reserve. But he's been practicing. The Chiefs don't have to count him against the 53. I thought maybe we'd see him against the Chargers, but not so. He is such a valuable special teams guy, four-phase special teams guy. What do you think the prospect of seeing Dorian O'Daniel in uniform again is?
Yeah, you're correct. With all the COVID rules, you can place players on injured reserve. You can move them in and out, but they have to spend a minimum of 3 weeks on the list. So what the Chiefs did was after he suffered the high ankle sprain, I believe it was December the 4th was when they officially placed him on injured reserve. The final week of the preseason was his first week back. So once the team designates a player as returned to practice, it opens a 21-day window for the team to evaluate him. they either determine that he's healthy enough to return, or you have to leave him on injured reserve. So that window is still open for the Chiefs to bring him back, considering that he did return. And we've seen this with the Chiefs throughout the year, or this past regular season with players who were placed on short-term injured reserve. They did eventually bring them back. And I think, like, for them, probably one of the main reasons they didn't activate him for Week 17 was because he's such a key contributor on special teams. They rested a lot of key players in Week 17. There was really no need to bring him up for the season finale. You'll probably see him the divisional round if he's healthy.
Okay. And just one final name. The vibes just aren't good for a return for Mitchell Schwartz, are they? I mean, we're just not sensing that we're going to see him again this year.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. Andy Reid, I've asked him consistently over the last month of the season what is going on with Mitchell Schwartz, and he keeps saying, look, it's really going to depend on what the doctors think. It's really going to depend on how Mitchell Schwartz feels. But we're talking about a back injury here, and the fact that he hasn't been practicing. I think he got injured in Week 6 was that a Week 6 or Week 5 against the Buffalo Bills? But that's a long time ago. So he hasn't played since. So that's, I don't know what he's been doing to stay in shape, but even if, I think the prospects of him being available for the postseason, I don't think they're very good. And that's just, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but just given what we've seen, I don't think his prospects are good.
And we've just spent a few minutes talking about the two position groups that I think have caused the most concern for Chiefs fans when they look at things. It's the linebacking core, just because of the attrition, right? Because of the injuries. It seems like Neiman and Wilson and Hitchens on the COVID list. There's so many bodies that have just run in and out here in the last few weeks, and of course offensive line with as we have spoken to all season. Not the offensive line here at the end of the season isn't what the Chiefs expected going into the year, or as it developed over the course of the season. But having to make do with what they have. And look, I guess when it comes to offensive line play, it's not going to be rated high among NFL offensive lines, but it gets for the most part, gets the job done. And I guess in Andy Reid and Andy Heck, I trust to put together an offensive line that could go out and help the Chiefs win a playoff game or two or three. We'll have to see how they line up against their first playoff opponent in the following week. And so, speaking of the playoffs, this is a different year for the playoff bracket. The structure, it's 7 teams. Only one got a bye in each conference. It's the Chiefs in the AFC, the Packers in the NFC. So they'll be watching the playoffs on TV this weekend. And from a Chiefs perspective, the first game they'll watch is on Saturday. It's Titans-Ravens is the game that kicks. Am I right about that? It is Titans-Ravens. No. It's Bills-Colts. Thank you. Bills-Colts kick it off. And it's the first game on Saturday, and then the two other. Gosh, I hope I'm right about this because I don't have the schedule in front of me. But the two other AFC games are Sunday,
correct?
With Ravens Titans and then Browns Steelers. We'll talk in greater detail next week about the opponent, but let's just go over this again. The Chiefs will play the worst remaining seed that comes out of this weekend, right? So if the 7th seeded Colts or the 6th seeded Browns, whoever the worst seeded team is, and it could be as high as the 4th seeded Titans, right? So if the seeded favorites win, the 2, 3, and 4, if it's a chalky playoff bracket in the first round, the Chiefs would play the Titans. So I'll ask each of you guys, is there an opponent that the Chiefs would want to avoid in their first playoff game of the 4 that would be eligible to play the Chiefs? And that would be the 4th seeded Titans, number 5 Baltimore, 6 Cleveland, and 7th the Indianapolis Colts. Herbie, let's start with you.
Teams to avoid. In a perfect world, if there are no upsets, then you are talking about either the Titans or the Ravens. But I think the good news for the Chiefs is they've already beaten the Ravens, and the Ravens just don't look the same offense and the same team they did last year when Lamar Jackson won the MVP. So if the Ravens do upset the 4 seed, the Tennessee Titans, I don't think you have to worry about them at all. The Browns, we just talked about them. 3 of their coaches, including their head coach, and 2 players won't even be around for the game against the Steelers. So I don't know if they have enough firepower to beat them. The team that's intriguing, and I think last weekend we discussed the Bills as a team that the Chiefs want to avoid. I don't know if the Colts have enough firepower to defeat them, but the Colts are intriguing. They do have some weapons. They do have a battle-tested quarterback in Phillip Rivers. But again, I don't think they also have enough to beat the Bills on the road. So ultimately, I think they are going to end up facing the Ravens.
It is interesting. This conversation is making me think of last year, and I might struggle to remember exactly what happened in what sequence, but I think the bottom line is that a lot was made early of, the Chiefs really don't want to go up against the Ravens, and then look how it unfolded in such a different way, right, that it played out differently. So I don't know that means we should expect the Colts to beat the Bills or anything like that, but I do feel like this is more of a coin toss on a lot of these things than we might normally expect, just because of all the other variables. Herbie just alluding to COVID aspects of Cleveland's situation and things like that. So I don't really take anything for granted on any of these matchups. And Blair, as you've noted, the road records this year have been favorable to the road teams. So oddly enough, for all we've just said, though, I think the team that I find intriguing / concerning maybe for the Chiefs really is the Browns, just because I feel like it's a lesser known quantity. If they do get through, I don't know what the timing is exactly on the coaching staff, but if they do get through, then I think they'll have a lot of that intact. And I just think there's some variables there that are going to be very, very interesting matched up against the Chiefs if it happens that way. I do feel like the Chiefs have the mojo over the Ravens, though, just to circle back to that point. And probably I think it would be a favorable thing in the end if the Chiefs got the Colts. So there's so many scenarios, right? But those are the ones that come to mind.
I think the Browns feel like they're playing with house money a little bit. If they can go into Pittsburgh and beat a team that they just beat in Cleveland a few days ago with Pittsburgh not playing Ben Roethlisberger and some other starters. Cleveland, how about, the Browns, as Herbie alluded to, first playoff game in 18 years, and they have to go into it without, their head coach and others, not available to participate in this because of COVID. And just a couple of thoughts on this. I remember when the Patriots were doing their thing for much of the previous 2 decades, and when they would have one of those 14-2 type of seasons, I always thought, heck, it doesn't matter what happens below them in the seeding. Some teams are just going to have to go into Foxborough and win, and then they'll have to, another team will have to go and win. And I just always thought that was, that's not going to happen. Patriots aren't losing to a team at home that that they finished with a better record, probably beat them during the regular season. But now that I cover a team that's in that position, I see all these little potholes and danger signs and obstacles, and I can make a case for all the other teams the Chiefs are playing that Ravens are due. Lamar Jackson hasn't won a playoff game, and the Bills they're the hottest team in the NFL, and all these other teams, I can find a reason for them to beat the Chiefs, and yet I never felt that way when the Patriots were rolling through everybody. So I don't know. Maybe there's a confidence that's in the Chiefs locker room that I'm sure there is, right? Why wouldn't there be a 14-2 team and still the image of them having to get a tipped field goal to beat the lowly Falcons in Week 16, getting run out of the Arrowhead Stadium in Week 17 by the Chargers, and just not playing particularly great over the last month, Patrick Mahomes. So I just wonder about those things. I don't know.
Hey Blair, just a side point on the confidence thing. It's on my mind because of something I'm working on about sort of the psychology of repeating. And I think I was telling you about this the other day, an interesting talk with a sports psychologist. And he makes the point that no matter what we see with all those close wins, whatever it was, the last 7 by 27 points, and then some others earlier, in the end, it feeds into a group dynamic that says we will find a way. We'll win those games. It doesn't, especially if you're the Super Bowl champion and you know that you've got the mojo in you, basically. So at least in terms of what they're feeling in the locker room, and at least from afar, from a sports psychologist standpoint, that framework is one of perpetuating their belief in themselves.
And it's fascinating you bring that up, Vahe, because as you guys know, for some of our special section stories, one of my assignments was to talk to a couple of former Chiefs quarterbacks on what they think of this team. And I had an opportunity to talk to Trent Green Wednesday morning, and I asked him that question, about these close games. And he basically said, and I quote, "These guys are up to the task. Their last 7 wins were by 1 score or less, so they know how to win the close ones. They did it last year, they've done it this year, and Patrick Mahomes is the main reason for that." And I think that's end quote. And I think that's the biggest reason why when we look at all these close games, what was the common denominator of them winning? And a lot of it does fall on the superstar quarterback. And I think that's the main reason why you have to have confidence in this team when you look at the upcoming opponents. Can they beat Patrick Mahomes in this offense?
Not many teams have. Okay, hey, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. We're back with Herbie Teope and Vahe Gregorian talking Chiefs. Okay, guys, the NFL MVP voting concluded, or votes had to be in by Wednesday this week. That's for the AP MVP award, which is the most widely recognized, most valuable player award for the NFL. And listen, there were times in the season where I thought Patrick Mahomes was a slam dunk, but performance over the last by him in the offense over the last month or so, and then compared to what Aaron Rodgers was doing in Green Bay, seems to have changed the impression of the favorite. And certainly we all get the Vegas odds emailed to us, who's the leaders, and Aaron Rodgers, of course, is the favorite in all of that. We got to ask Patrick Mahomes about it earlier this week, and said he would love to have it, but would rather have the Super Bowl MVP. So, what do you guys think? Is it Aaron Rodgers' award to lose, and should there be outrage from Chiefs fans if Patrick Mahomes doesn't win it?
Go for it, Vahe.
A couple things here. I think just if you're picking up on the chatter or whatever we'd call what we're hearing on social media and the cases being made, I suspect Aaron Rodgers is kind of in the driver's seat. I think you guys, particularly Herbie, maybe on the beat, in the nitty-gritty of the beat, would have a better feel for that around the league. So I could foresee that being the case. I think Chiefs fans might be a little bummed, but I also don't think anybody's too hung up on it either. I think one thing that I've kind of come to understand, and I'd be interested in how you guys see this, is, it is obviously statistically based in a lot of ways, right? The casual voter on these things will look at numbers maybe and probably more than feel or thinking through how each game went. I mean, we've seen a couple of Chiefs games where If they were in position to have to rally, Patrick's numbers might look different. Instead, they were running 4-minute drills to lead the clock. Just some things like that about the three phases of the game and how it plays into trying to win. I do think, Blair, I think about this phrase often. I think we were there together for an NCAA tournament mock bracket when Gary Walters of Princeton was the NCAA tournament committee chairman. And I remember him using this line that if you torture the numbers, torture the data long enough, you can get it to confess to anything. So whatever it is you want to get those numbers to tell you about how you want to vote is how you can look at it. But I just think there's more to it. And I think the Chiefs fan can rest pretty secure and assured that Patrick Mahomes is a really good quarterback. And how they'll feel about this season is going to be about the next month, much more so than whether he gets that honorary title.
And I tend to agree with Vahe there, but you know what? I'm going to say this. Maybe there's a little bias in me because we cover the team. So I haven't had the ability to really watch what Aaron Rodgers has done, but Mahomes to me is the MVP. You know, Andy Reid's offense and the things they're able to do. And I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is not special because he is a special quarterback. We know that. You know, we've seen some of the throws he makes. But as far as the Chiefs offense goes and as far as what Andy Reid has been able to do with his offense, it all starts with number 15. Some of those throws he makes, I think, are better than what Aaron Rodgers can make. To me, he is the MVP.
You know, somebody had an interesting thought last week, or maybe it was before the Week 17 game, where Rodgers had a great game, right? I think he threw 4 touchdown passes and got his numbers up, and and so he got an opportunity to make a final statement. Patrick Mahomes did not get that opportunity because all he did was lead his team to a 14-1 record, best record in the NFL this season, and he could have played in the Week 17 game and added a couple of, added a few touchdown passes and yards and improved his passer rating, all that. But no, he sat out with other starters. I think that's what's going to happen. I think it'll go Rodgers, Mahomes, and then Derrick Henry in the voting. Henry with a 2,000-yard rushing season, which doesn't happen very often in the NFL. And I don't think there'll be a lot of outrage in Kansas City, especially if what you say, Vahe, is Mahomes ends up leading the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. I would love to see those teams meet in the Super Bowl, Chiefs and Packers. I think that would be a fantastic game and would be a rematch of Super Bowl I. So that would be pretty cool. Let's finish with a thought on Eric Bieniemy. As of now, he has interviewed for 5 of the 6 head coaching positions that are open in the NFL. The only one that he hasn't interviewed for is the Houston Texans. I don't know if that's scheduled or not, but 5 of the 6, I guess, in the COVID virtual world, it's easy to do 5 interviews in 3 days. Just click on the Zoom link and you're interviewing. So it's not like you had to get on a plane and zip around the country for these things. So, Vahe, it seems to me that if it doesn't happen for Eric Bieniemy this year, then there is a kind of a deeper story with several levels maybe to explore, and we will do it. I'm sure, and you'll do it as well. So what do we make of Eric Bieniemy interviewing around the NFL, and is this the year he gets the job?
Yeah, and look, that's obviously an open question. I think that the things we can think about are that the last 2 years he was 0 for 7 on interviews. But I think we could also make a case that the last 2 years you were still waiting to see him, I think, just get more comfortable in the job. He'd only been offensive coordinator for a year when he started the first round of interviews than last year. And I think we've all seen him mature just in the press conferences. I wish he'd be a little more forthcoming about some things, but he also works for a guy who took a long time to go beyond what he's got in his vest and share more. So But to your point, Blair, if he doesn't get a job now, we'll think of it as him being essentially 0 for 13, certainly 0 for 12 probably on things he interviewed for. And I tried to make the point in what I wrote today. I spoke with Willie Lanier, who's been advocating for this kind of change with the ears of NFL commissioners for more than a generation now. You can look at each individual decision, and I'm sure you can find a way to rationalize is probably the right term, but rationalize why they went a different way, right? Who they chose instead, why, what the fit was, etc. But when you put it in the big picture, sort of the collage of the whole thing, it really looks, the plausible deniability is kind of gone, right? I mean, if you've got 13 times you had an opportunity to hire an African-American coach in a league that now has two black head coaches, something is awry. And I get that everybody's got to get the right fit for them. But I think to Willie Lanier's point, at some point, the guy that's got as good or better credentials than everybody else just has to get a chance. And whatever your whatever your misgivings might be about him, it's a little bit like you were talking about earlier. You see might see the flaws in the teams we see more closely, but nobody's perfect. Give the guy a chance.
Bravo, Vahe. Bravo.
I agree. It's very well said. Look, I'm not. You know what? The NFL history is filled with coaches who ended up being mediocre and lost their job and then got hired for another job, right? For another head coaching job. So people we call retreads. And I don't want it to sound wrong here, but I think Eric Bieniemy, I think what you said, Vahe, is that his resume absolutely is he deserves to have a job based on his resume. And if he turns out to be a mediocre head coach, that's how I'll know the NFL has made progress in this area, right?
Right.
And if he's a mediocre head coach and then hired by somebody else to be given a next chance, then we can talk about equality in the coaching ranks in the NFL. Listen, these are NFL teams are billion-dollar industries, and they have a lot at stake with the hiring of a head coach. Eric Bieniemy deserves to be in this club and to be a head coach. So here's hoping that it happens for him. As somebody who follows the Chiefs, if you're a Chiefs fan, I think you'd prefer to, like the previous two offensive coordinators that left the Chiefs, you prefer to see Bieniemy in the NFC rather than the AFC. We'll just see where this goes.
To that point, though, Blair, I'm going to tell you. You mentioned you prefer to see him in the NFC, but we look at the 5 teams that he's interviewed with: Atlanta, Detroit, Jacksonville, the LA Chargers, the New York Jets. My goodness. When you think of the Chargers, they've got a stud young quarterback in Justin Herbert with weapons. Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Hunter Henry. To me, that's the job that if I'm Eric Bieniemy, that's the one I want. I don't want New York. I don't want Detroit. I don't want Atlanta or Jacksonville. I would want the Chargers. And unfortunately, of course, that would put him in the AFC West. But what a fantastic thing that would be. Reed versus Bieniemy. How much will Reed have to change up his offense to attack the Chargers? Because Bieniemy's going to know everything. So it's just so many interesting storylines there. Sorry, I know we got off rail there, but it's just.
No, it's true though.
Yeah, if I'm going to advocate for a team, it's the Chargers.
And if you're the Chargers, isn't that part of the equation for you? Isn't that part of the selling point? Eric Bieniemy knows how it happened, and in the franchise, it's won 5 straight division titles and has been to the playoffs every year. The Chiefs are what the Chargers want to be. How do you not hire the guy who knows him best? And the Chargers gave him his first shot as a professional. They drafted him. That's right. No, that's exactly right. So we'll see. We'll see how it all unfolds. Okay, great conversation. Herbie Teope and Vahe Gregorian. Thanks, guys, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Blair.
Thanks, Blair.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff and everyone who helps make SportsBeat KC happen. Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. A tip of the cap to Herbie Teope and Vahe Gregorian for Talkin' Chiefs. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we got another deal for you, especially for those that want to deep dive into the Stars' terrific Chiefs coverage. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. How do you get it? Well, you go to kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. That's kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. You want more than just sports coverage? Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. Get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email, bkerkhoff@kcstar.com, and I'll get you to the right place. So whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Friday with another episode.